inviting me here. So my name is Aaron Jewitt. I'm going to be talking about forensic timelines via Sysmon. WEF stands for Windows Event Forwarding, if you see that acronym, and ELK, Elastic Stack. So who am I? I'm a threat hunter. This meme is my life right now. Just about every alert you see on the network, about 90% of them are sysadmins doing weird things. So this is what I do. So right now I work for Booz Allen, working with the U.S. Army up in Wiesbaden as a threat hunter. I spent about 10 years as a ROC operator at the NSA. So I've got a lot of experience on both sides, the defense and offense, as far as InfoSec goes. Living in Frankfurt. The new job with Elastic, I start next month. So I'm going to be transitioning from a Windows-centric network to an entirely cloud-based network that I'm going to have to defend. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me, I think. New adventures. And once again, all opinions are my own, not anybody else's, in case I say something that makes somebody upset. So what this talk is about. So it's going to be about basically using Kibana or Splunk. I'm going to focus on Kibana because it was free and easy to use at my house. We use Splunk at the office. They're both great. So we're going to be talking about building dashboards that make the response easier. So there's multiple portions. There's the alerting. There's detecting the adversary. There's hunting. There are tons and tons of blogs out there and talks out there about using this type of setup for that. So I wanted to focus on what do you do when you see an alert? How do you respond to it? And how do you make it quicker, easier, and more efficient to do the response? So what this talk is not about, the anomaly detection, the threat hunting, I definitely, I could do a whole other talk on that. But like I said, lots of people have done these talks. So I didn't want to focus on that portion of it. I'm not going to go step-by-step walkthrough on setting this up. I've got a lot of instructions, but there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet showing you how. And yeah, absolutely zero blockchain or AI in this talk. Because blockchain's a scam and AI is way too complicated for me. So we're going to go on this scenario. Your CISO just got a call. Brian Krebs said he's got indications that you're compromised. He's got a host name, a username, and it's Saturday. How quickly can you get forensic information from that host about that user? One of the users and hosts in New York, it's an international company, New York, Singapore. Imagine it's, 4th of July weekend and some holiday in Singapore. It's a Sunday in Germany, so nothing's open and you've got to get all these answers. So how long does it take to collect this data? How many people in your company are capable of doing this? These are the scenarios that is traditional InfoSec. You get a lot of people, they get a phone call and they got to get on an airplane to Singapore to go image a hard drive. And it's just not the good way to do things. So problems. The attacker is moving quickly through your network. You have to be able to keep up with them. You have to contain them and find them. Getting data for investigations is hard. If anybody who's taken the SANS forensics courses, the first 2 or 3 days of most of the forensics courses is all about gathering the data, about imaging hard drives, about, getting the forensic information off of the device. That takes time and expertise. If you don't have the expertise in-house, you got to pay expensive consultants to go do it for you. So this talk is about, getting the systems built so that you don't have to call these people. You don't have to spend this money on that. More problems. Traditional SIEMs only contain alerts. They said the antivirus says something bad happened. And that's all it tells you. Something bad happened and you've got a time and a host. And that's all the information that the antivirus gives you because they suck. Attackers delete the logs. They compromise user accounts and they spread. So you're trying to quarantine a system, but it's actually the user account that's compromised. Evading antivirus, like I said, it's super easy. I lost a lot of respect for antivirus during my 10 years on the offensive side. And I haven't gained any respect back after the 3 years on the defensive side. So what's the solution? So we're going to create Kibana or Splunk, not, should be yes or, either one, whatever you want to pay for. And so you make these dashboards and it makes this easy to do. So then you get a dashboard and then you don't have to spend 3 days of SANS training teaching somebody how to image a hard drive. They just go to the dashboard and type in an IP address and boom, there's all your information. They type in a username. You can do the investigations extremely quickly like this. Elastic and Splunk, they are great for forensic science, but everybody does the talks about data science, about AI, about anomaly detection. They put up these, crazy formulas for the data scientists that they blow my mind. I don't understand any of that. What I do know is forensic science, and all about, most forensics is creating a timeline of events. What happened, when, who did it, why. You're doing an investigation. I don't need, complicated math for that. I just need a time. So how are we going to do this? So this is what I'm going to talk about in this talk. So it's a 3-step process, super easy. Well, it's a lot harder than that, but it's, this is, I'm going to gloss over a lot of stuff, but it's pretty much these 3 steps. So you got to enable the verbose logging. So we're going to do that with Sysmon on the Windows boxes, Elastic's auditbeat module, which just came out, on the Linux and Mac OS systems, which is basically like Sysmon but for Linux. And then you get all those logs, you centrally collect them, and then you feed them into Elastic Stack or Splunk, whatever you're using, and then you build your dashboards and you're good to go. And then after that, you got to keep growing and adapting and changing your stuff. So it's not like that. You do that and you're done. Hang up the mission accomplished banner. All right. So step 1, getting the right logs. So Sysmon. So if anybody hasn't heard about Sysmon, if you're running a Windows domain, you absolutely should have Sysmon deployed. It's a free utility, so big emphasis there on free. And the config file it allows granular control over exactly which logs are created. Most people, they just say, it's too much data. It's because if you use the default configuration file for Sysmon, it's, probably a gigabyte a day per host. If you tune it down, to only send you the stuff that you care about, you can get it down to just a few megabytes per host, which is a much more manageable amount in an enterprise. This is a quick overview of some of the stuff, if you haven't heard of Sysmon, that it logs. Every time a process starts and stops, anytime somebody changes the file stamp on a file, attackers love doing this when they put down their rootkits or implants. Every network connection, the network connection tells you not just the source and destination IP like a firewall log will, but it tells you the exact process that spawned that network connection. Registry changes, file downloads, named pipes, drivers, etc. You can see this. It's an amazing amount of data once you tune it to work right. All right, so you manage it via config file. So if you haven't looked at it, Swift on Security put out a config file. The community's been adding to it. It's a great place to start. And I say start as in you will have to make changes to it for your domain. No matter, you cannot just take this and plug it in. Every domain is unique. You're going to have scripts, as I mentioned from that first meme, some sysadmin is doing some weird shit out there and you're going to have to whitelist it because it's just going to flood your logs. Constant testing and changing. It never ends. Somebody's going to go buy some new software and it's going to wreck your config. And you're going to have to, tune that out. So here's some config tips. So that top line, exclude the good and include everything else. A lot of people will try to they'll treat it like it's an IDS, like it's Splunk or like it's Snort, where they say, I know this is bad, so show me this. And that's the wrong way to go because then the attackers will say, oh, well, this is all you're looking for. I'm going to do something else. If you include everything and only whitelist the known noise, Chrome.exe making a connection on port 80 to the internet. Okay, I'm going to exclude that. There may be times the attacker uses that and it sucks, but it's going to flood my logs. I want to know every time Chrome talks to a port that's not 80 or 443. Maybe then I whitelist my local, internal servers that use weird ports. Whitelist with caution with Sysmon. If you whitelist an event, it will never show up in the logs and it's like it never happened. Inevitably you will be doing an investigation into something and you'll run into a dead end and you'll know that the logs keep happening. You just don't have a copy because the attacker moved somewhere. Like I said, maybe they migrated into Chrome.exe and started connecting on 443 over the internet. You're not going to have that connection in your Sysmon logs. Sorry. Just part of the price of doing business. Management tips. So Sysmon config file, every host, when you can host your config on your netlogon server on your domain, and then just use Active Directory to tell everybody to go back to this config. Make sure it's read only. of course. You don't want your attackers messing with your config. Best practices we've found over the last year or so of doing it. 3 separate config files, your workstations, your your domains controllers, and then your servers. On a domain controller, you're going to want to log everything. And you can generally whitelist everything that happens on that because it's a domain controller. You shouldn't have Chrome connecting out on the internet. So on a domain controller, you may want to log that. So have 3 separate configs, customize it for your domain. Group policy PowerShell, they're great for deploying this stuff. Once again, I'm not going to go too in depth over this. There are blogs out there on how to do all this stuff. Oh, and yeah, don't make changes on a Friday. Just don't. Elastic auditbeat module. This just came out January 29th. So when I actually did the call for paper, this didn't exist. So yeah, every host gets a unique GUID when it's deployed. And so you can change the host name, the IP address, everything about the host, but that unique GUID stays the same. So in your stack, you can track all the changes to a system over time. Other than that, yeah, process information, socket creation, user logins, etc. And so anybody who's ever smashed their head against auditd logs knows that they're just a nightmare. And Linux logging in general is just a nightmare. So this is, a great thing to have. For some reason, Red Hat 4 versus Red Hat 5, they changed the schemas and everything looks different. And it's just, no standardization. Additional data. So in addition to the Windows event logs, you may want to add some extra stuff. So Active Directory information is great for enriching your dashboards. So like get AD computers, get AD users on a daily basis and pipe that into your dashboards. Then you can add all the, when you look up a host name, you'll find out exactly what desk they sit at, and it's displayed on the dashboard. What the phone number is for a user, so you can pick them up and call them and say, "Hey, was this you?" Auto runs. Palantir made a cool project where they run auto run. It's a PowerShell script that'll run auto runs and write it as a Windows event log, so you can just scoop that up in all the rest of your collection. And then any other Windows event logs, I'll cover some. So step 2, collecting the logs. If your logs look like that, you're getting too much data. So different ways of collecting logs. You've got agent-based and then just using the built-in functionalities. Most of the time, you're going to have to use a hybrid approach. In a Windows domain, the Windows event forwarding is a great way to use the built-in capabilities. Once again, it's free. And if a system gets the GPOs, then it gets the event forwarding. Agent-based technology, a lot of times your agent will die and you have no idea. I mean, how do you know you didn't get a log? That, it's just sitting out there. So, relying on the agents gets a bit tricky. As you'll see in a little bit of diagram later, at some point you do have to use an agent to get it into your digestion system. Windows event forwarding. So, like I said, it's free. Mostly free. You just need a Windows server. Base install Windows Server, VMworks, can be a Windows event collector. So, GPO to tell the workstations what to do. Everybody has to have WinRM on in your domain. If you don't have it on, just turn it on. Jessica Payne at Microsoft has a bunch of great blog posts on how to set this up, how to use this for threat hunting. Once again, this could be its own 2-hour talk. So I'm not going to talk about it. The subscription. So every system gets a subscription. These are all the Windows events that have to go to the collection system. So everything in Sysmon, your logins, these are just some other recommendations of things that you want to send for a collection. USB events is great. If you're looking at like insider threat or things like that, every time that's the kernel PNP, every time a device is plugged into a system, you'll get a log event for it. What do you do once you've got it in your Windows event collector? Then you can send it. So in this example, we send it to Kafka. So I used hunting ELK for this talk to set this up at home because it was easy to do. And we use Kafka at work as well. It's a great place to send your logs and everything can subscribe to it. So if you have Splunk and Elastic and a traditional SIEM and whatever else, you can send everything to your Kafka instance and then from there, send it out to whoever needs it. It's a subscription model. All right. So step 3, we're going to build things with these logs. This is the big thing that the big part of this talk. All right. So the alerts, I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I got to, put a quick shout out. Sigma project by Florian Roth. it uses a lot of these Sysmon data to make alerts. So if you see run DLL32 executing with no command line options, that's bad. That's an attacker most of the time. A lot of these rules like that. I think there are about 130 Sysmon specific rules in the Sigma project. And ELK has a script that will just go to GitHub, get the latest rules, and create Elast alerts with them, so that in your Elastic Stack, you get alerts whenever these rules trigger, and you can add them to your dashboards, or you can send them to a Slack channel, whatever you want to do with them. All right, so the dashboards. So the dashboards, the big advantage to dashboards is you can have one person who learns how to use Elastic, use Kibana or Splunk, and really build out these nice, easy-to-use dashboards, so that the rest of your forensics team doesn't have to become a data science specialist. Most of these places, well, most of the time I've seen businesses, they get their logs, they throw it into Kibana, and then they just hand it to their security team and say, have fun. And it's just a mess. And nobody, they're not data scientists. They want to know what happened and when. So the dashboards can make this easy. So host investigation dashboards. So I'm going to talk about 3 big dashboards, and at the end of the talk, I've got a link to my GitHub project and all the JSON files to import these into your Kibana instance. So the host investigation dashboard: who, what, when, where, how, and why for a single host. So you enter a host name, IP address, select your time frame, and boom, here's your forensics timeline. If you've ever done the SANS classes, they talk about log to timeline. They've got lots of these scripts to take the logs, you move them to a server, you run Python scripts, you export that to an Excel spreadsheet, and then you do some other things to it, and then you get this timeline. And here you type in an IP address or a host name and you hit enter and it's done, depending on how much horsepower your Elastic or Splunk instance has. Each panel should answer a question. You split it out so it's not too confusing. And then, once again, whitelist the noise, your SCCMs, regular occurring tasks. So this is just a kind of how I've separated it out. It's pretty easy to do. User events, show me all the active users, who was logged into the system, at what timeline, successful and failed login attempts. You want to grab the logs from the domain controller as well to enrich this. Elevated privilege account logins, 4672. These are great to see. If you see a normal user elevating their privileges, you've got it, probably going to have a bad day. Commands executed by system. If you ever see system user execute whoami.exe, you just got owned. Because red team guys, and I'm guilty of this as well, the very first thing you do when you pop a shell on a box, you type who am I to see if you got system. And that's an indicator right there. So, everybody's guilty of it. So if you see whoami.exe running a system, sound the alarm. Downloaded files. This is a great one. If, when you're trying to find out why an antivirus alert popped and the user says, I have no idea why that popped. And then you can go to the downloaded files and you can, if NID 15, you say, hey, I see here that chrome.exe created this file and the downloads at this exact time while you were logged in, while you were surfing to this dubious website. Oh, now the user has a little more trouble arguing the case. Or you see outlook.exe create the file. Great things to know when you're doing an investigation. Process execution. Every process has a unique process GUID. I'll go into that later. But you get the full information about the process, about, the full path, what the current directory was, who's the user that ran it, everything you can imagine with that. So you make these dashboards. So if I see the parent process, it also tells you who the parent was. If the parent's command, PowerShell, WScript, C-script, put those all into a little panel so I can say, hey, the user just opened up PowerShell and ran all these commands. And they work in the finance section, so they shouldn't be doing that. Strange network connections. This is, things that not Chrome talking to 80 and 443, things of that nature. Just, you can include everything, but it's going to be noisy if you want to get into the big investigations. You can, if you've got more data coming in than just the Windows events, you can add in your proxy data, your firewall, your bro data. Once again, make this really easy to do for your users. You can have a junior person, very quickly identify, events inside your firewall logs correlated with your Windows logs. Modifications to the host, registry changes, new files created. So if you see somebody dropping files in System 32 that shouldn't be, new services getting installed, drivers loaded, USB changes, once again, insertions. You can also find this if you look for registry keys with star enum star. Every time you plug a registry key, or a USB item into a Windows box, it makes a registry key and gives you the name of it. So you can see, Jim's iPad plugged in, at this time on it, it's in the registry. And then the WMI subscription changes. That's a popular persistence technique for attackers. All right. So onto the user investigation dashboard. Once again, users get compromised just like systems do. Sometimes the user's bad. Sometimes their account gets compromised. There's no way of knowing really the difference just by the behavior of what's happening on the computer. Most of the time that takes like a law enforcement type investigation or somebody who's going to fess up to it. Get AD user as your friend. If you can enrich this data, then you can have the user's phone number. And so then your junior analyst on a Saturday morning sees somebody logging in and they type it into the panel and it's got their phone number there. They just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, was this you?" "Yeah, I'm working on a Saturday morning." "Okay, great." And they say, "No, I'm with my kids at the field. I'm not at work at all." Then you got an issue. This is just a quick screenshot of the dashboard I made at home over the weekend on Kibana. Like I said, we use Splunk at work. I use Kibana at home. Either way, it's not too hard to do. You can see the dubious PowerShell command line spawning off there. The user was running PowerShell Empire because it was me. So this is just so you saw the timeline there. That was the timeline of every computer that's logged into. So when you've got a user account that gets compromised, this is great because you can just put in and say, "Hey, over the last 7 days, show me everything this user's done, every system they've logged into, all these events, successful and failed logins." Definitely, it gets a bit creepy though, because this dashboard is capable of showing you everything a user's done on your domain, anywhere. So this kind of because of the power of this and these dashboards in general, if you do this at work, make sure you multi-factor authentication, lock down these systems, because there is going to be some sensitive information in here. It's not going to show you the contents of files, but it show you the name of the files. You will have admins typing the password into the command line, and you'll have those passwords in your logs. So, bug people about that. It's bad habits, but you're going to see that in your event logs. This is a good selling point to the compliance teams, though, because, I live up in Frankfurt, regularly the Polizei will walk into the Deutsche Bank offices and ask for, escort a user out and ask for everything they've done. So a dashboard like this would come in handy for them. All right. So let's say you get an alert and it's talking about a very specific process that's happening. And you say, what is this process doing? Every process in Sysmon has a unique process GUID. This process GUID is unique. So if you spawn 4 calcs.exes, all 4 of them are going to have a unique GUID. So you just go to the dashboard, search for this GUID. It will show you who spawned it, who its parent was. Every single event related to this process will be in this dashboard. And in the dashboard, you can add multiple GUIDs and get a whole hierarchy chain of events of everything that happens. So if you see a user doing something shady with PowerShell, you can see every child process and the parent process, chained together. This is just a quick instance that shady user spawning PowerShell Empire again. So you can see, I think I ran Who Am I in there. Actually, that ran automatically. That was just part of PowerShell Empire. I didn't even have to run Who Am I. It just does it on its own. So I can find out, I can just trace it back. So this is great for junior analysts to really get an idea of every time you see an alert, you say, okay, is this something bad? And I've seen in countless organizations where, an analyst will just say, oh, I've seen this alert hundreds of times. It's nothing. Well, how do you know it's nothing? Well, one time it could be something. Well, it's just so hard to investigate individual alerts. They just write it off. Oh, it's nothing. With this, you can say, okay, show me everything that account actually did, everything that process has done. And now you can say definitively that it's nothing or it is something. So I think I probably went a little too fast, but so any organization can build this. Very little money. So the software is free. You just need basically the hardware to run this on, and everything can be done on virtual machines. The dashboards are not just for the security team. This whole system is not just for the security team. So if you are trying to get this built in your organization, go get the Active Directory guys on board. Go get the DevOps guys on board. All of this data is great for them as well. And if you get them on board, then that helps the funding, and your CISO will be happy as well to share the burden of this system. When you can use this to audit changes to Active Directory or do a quick query of all crashing processes or find out, things of that nature. If a DevOps guy is trying to troubleshoot why their system keeps crashing, they can use these dashboards. So, are there any questions? Sorry if that went a little faster than I expected. Oh, Don.
One question: do you have any experience how to do this in German labor law settings?
Yeah. So we spoke with some of the German Army Bundesheer people came in. They were speaking about this, and they like the fact that when the logs come in, they don't have the contents of any of the files. So you have the file name. So if somebody puts sensitive information in the name of the file, that may be an issue. But it's easy to justify. Look, we were collecting the names of the files on our domain. So they were pretty confident they could sell it to their lawyers. I haven't had that argument, but once again, you just have to have the right lawyer, I guess. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question was, how does that work with German labor laws, with the sensitivity of the information, etc. And yes, any system like this absolutely must be locked down. Like, don't put this out on your AWS cloud with a crappy password or no password. Two-factor authentication, keep it protected.
Any idea this would fly with a big company with a decent union behind it? Because you can basically see, if someone was working, what they were working on.
Yeah. So the question was about a big company with a union and monitoring individuals. And the data is already there in the network. We're just centrally collecting it. So once again, I'm not a lawyer. The German labor laws, I'm definitely not familiar with them to that extent. But you're collecting the data that's already there. I mean, any of this information you could find out with the PowerShell script as well. But this just makes it a lot easier and makes it a lot more simple to view and see.
I see them push back Microsoft. So the Slack thing for Microsoft, the Teams.
Yeah, Microsoft Teams.
I've seen them push it back because of that, because they need to see when people are not working and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a heads up.
Yeah, I'm sure there's always anything like this. There may be pushback because the users would have zero visibility in this. I don't know how much pushback. The pushback would have to come, from somebody who has access or somebody who knows what's in the system and knows more about the system. Like Microsoft Teams makes it pretty obvious, I think. And normal managers in the company should not have access to this system. This should be like the IT guys and security guys and maybe some compliance teams. Regular old manager, no, they should not access the system in any way. Yes?
What percentage of coverage do you think would be necessary to actually profit from this? So do I need to have 100% of my service and 100% of my clients covered with the solution? Or?
Yeah. So the question is what percentage of coverage to profit from this? I would aim for 100%. I mean, it's because it is free and it is just a GPO that you push out to the systems.
But it still has to be rolled out.
Yes, it does have to be rolled out. And yeah, we've been doing it for a year and we haven't gotten to 100% yet. There are always going to be, pushback from admins. Workstations, I definitely think 100% is doable. We've had red teams come in, and before we had this, they were able to do PowerShell Empire and living off the land techniques, and we didn't see it. After we built this, we kicked their butt. We would see them immediately. We'd get the alerts within 10 minutes of them coming in, and we'd kick them out within 30. And so, the look on a red team's face when you have a full report of every single command they ran while they were on your system is great. It makes up for all those years of them coming in and kick your ass when you can say, this is everything you did and this is when we kicked you out of the network. And that's a great thing for a pen testing report to have that. And so, that's, as far as workstations go, you need to have coverage because they're going to go to your kiosk downstairs or, the waiting room area or somewhere where it's not going to be a critical access system and then try to move laterally from there. Servers, I would push for 100% if you can, but it's going to be an ongoing fight that never ends. Oh. And, the question slide. Yeah, that's the GitHub link for the, so I've got these slides as well as the JSON file. So if you want to, use these dashboards, you just go there, you import them right into your Kibana. So I was using, ELK, the hunting elk for this. So it's formatting the events based on the fact that Kibana gets them first, and then they move into, that Kafka gets them first, and then they move into Kibana. Everybody's going to have different field names, but if you just do if you have different field names, you can find and replace inside of the JSON files, and they should work.
One other question where I'm complete newbie. Do you have experience with German and English Windows versions? Because my limited experience sometimes made really problems because a lot of things are then suddenly German.
Yeah, and I think that's where when I mentioned that every domain is unique, you're going to have some processes that are the same name and some that are completely different. And so you're going to have to I think I kind of skimmed over it, but I said start small with your config. When you're building this out, pick random hosts, 5 or 10 hosts in the network, and just start collecting from those systems. Do not push to everybody in the network all at once. That's a horrible idea, and it will break things. Pick 5 or 6 people and spend a week or two just tuning the logs and getting rid of the white noise, and then maybe go from 5 to 10 to 100 to 1,000 from there. As you build out your config, take it. It's a project. You're going to need a project manager for this to get it deployed. Somebody to kind of champion this and push it out into your domain. Yeah.
Can you get the same quality for Unix systems with auditbeat?
I think so. Like I said, auditbeat came out, and the question was same quality of information for auditbeat. So auditbeat came out January 29th. As I mentioned, my next job is going to be working for Elastic, which is primarily a Mac OS Linux-based network. So I'll be learning this and trying to build this on these systems. So prior to the auditbeat, I've tried building out these dashboards using like auditd data, just using the built-in Windows event logs or the Windows syslog data, and it's just a nightmare. You get data from your ESX server and from your Red Hat server and your Ubuntu server and your Debian server, and the logs are all completely different format, and there's no normalization, and it's horrible. Yes. So, yeah. So I'm hoping that, like I said, I haven't done it yet, but I'm hoping that it'll work. Are there any other questions? All right. So I guess that concludes my talk, and I'll be here the rest of the day. And if anybody has any other questions, thank you.